Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. And hey, guys and gals, I am in love with the Land of Eam. This is a new deluxe version box set RPG that was recently delivered by Exalted Funeral. And I was a backer of this project. I can't remember if it was on Backer Kid or Game. I think it was Game Found. I don't know. I always get them all confused. But when this arrived about, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I just saw the production value, I saw the game, I saw the amazing hex map, one of the most beautiful hex maps I've ever seen in my life. And I instantly fell in love. I fell in love with this world. I fell in love with the characters, what this game is presenting. I think the rules are really interesting. And it's a game that just grabs me by the neck and pulls me into its world. And it's a world that I want to explore. I want to live in. I wish I could teleport myself into this world right now because it is so inventive, so whimsical, full of so much adventure and discovery and exploration. And yeah, it's incredible, and we are going to be spending some more time with this game on the channel. So in this video, we will be doing just kind of a broad overview. We'll take a look at the core rulebook, the bestiary, and the campaign setting rulebook. We'll take a little look at the map and talk a little bit about the game. And so this game is a traditional RPG, a GM and players. There aren't any official solo rules for it, but I think it would be pretty easy to play solo, especially if you pick up a good oracle. I will be using part of the time the Dungeon Dive 3D6 Oracle and Bag of Fate, which is available on itch.io for just a couple bucks. I'll be using that. I'll be using some other oracles for when I play solo. But this game has so much to it, so many cool random charts, and the world that they've created to play in just feels like a really neat sandbox to play in. And I'm kind of developing maybe a little bit of a different way to play in this game's sandbox. And we'll talk about that in the follow-up video. And that'll be kind of like a session 0, where I will also go into detail on character creation. We'll just do kind of a broad overview of character creation today. But what do you get in your deluxe edition? Well, you will get this amazing map. Oh God, this hex map is so awesome. When I folded this out and took a look at it, all I wanted to do was dive into this world and have adventures here. I will show some detailed views of the hex map a little later in this video, but this is the hex map that is covered in the Mucklands campaign setting. And so this is a huge campaign setting that is 426 pages of quests and NPCs and settlements and dungeons and lore and rumors and just all kinds of things for us to use to play in. And just, man, yeah, super exciting. And then we get the core rulebook. Now the core rulebook is not thin. This is not a simple game. The art style might lead you to believe that it is kind of a simple game, maybe a kid's game or a family game, but that is not the case. There's a lot going on to this game. There's quite a bit of crunch, and I think it does some things new and exciting. And the core rulebook is about 240 pages, but this also has an extensive bestiary, and it has lots of random charts, lots of great art. So it's not just, it's not just 240 pages crammed full of rules. And then in the deluxe edition, you also get your volume 1 of your bestiary. And the bestiary is also very cool. And so, like I said, I was a backer of this deluxe edition. I also got some cool little meeples here. So we have this gnome, and we have like the thief style character. We have one of the mushroom kin. I love the mushroom kin in this game. We have the knight errant and a skeletal bard there, and this kind of like frog adventurer guy. So the way they describe the game, the way they pitch the game is Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets. And I love that description. I think it works. I think it kind of sets the tone. And so let's take a look at the core rulebook first. Oh, you also get, I forgot to mention, you also get a cool little box. And this is just a storage box that slips inside your regular box. and you can keep stuff in here. So I have character sheets. Unfortunately, it's not 8.5 by 11, so you will have to fold any large papers, but I have my character sheets in here like that. I have a notebook that I will be using for my campaign. I'm going to throw that in there. We can throw our meeples and our dice in there. And you guys know how much I like these kinds of little storage boxes to where I can feel like I can store an entire world in this box too. And every time I open it, I'm kind of entering into this world. There's just something kind of psychological about that for me. And I think that stems back to, you know, my experience in the early 80s with Redbox D&D of just having everything contained in that one box. But let's take a look at the core rulebook here. Let me move these to the side real quick. Let's read a little bit about what it says. Land of Eam. The Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets in this light-hearted fantasy tabletop role-playing game about exploration, discovery, and being creative. Land of Eam is a game of whimsical, colorful characters exploring a wondrous world full of danger and discovery. As lore-seeking wanderers, fortune-seeking pioneers, and adventure-seeking do-gooders, your heroes will travel across the sprawling hex map, encounter both the perilous and the hilarious, and unearth the remnants of a forgotten age. Set in the fantasy world of the graphic novel series Rickety Stitch and the Gelatinous Goo, and the book series Dungeoneer Adventures, Land of Eam is easy to learn and packed with rules and resources that make playing and running the game a breeze. Now there are quick rules, quick setup rules. I haven't taken a look at those yet, but I think I'm going to, because like I said, even though the game is lighthearted and whimsical, that doesn't mean it's simple. This is obviously quite a bit more complex than something like Morkborg. And so there's quite a bit going on. There is a lot for the GM to track. There's quite a few things for the players to track, but I think everything is well organized and presented. And so learning and playing this game won't be very difficult. But on the inside covers here, we have some very basic charts here for our quick rules reference on how to do skill checks. The really neat thing about the skills is we have a degree of a success from complete failure to complete success with various degrees in between. And so I think that does make it easy to narrate the outcome, especially when you are playing solo. There are different skills and abilities that the characters have. Here we have a very brief overview of combat and traveling and camping. The focus on this game is on exploration and discovery. It's not on combat. Combat is here, but combat is pretty quick, and you really don't get any XP out of combat. You mainly get your XP out of doing the other things, and so that's another thing that I'm really interested in. It also has a pretty detailed crafting system. I think if you get into this game, you are going to want to participate in the crafting and light survival elements because of its open world sandbox nature. The crafting is actually really cool. There's something like 200 different components and recipes that you can find and learn to make all kinds of different things. Here we have some brief rules on rations, on weapon rules. Weapons are really interesting in this game. You have one-handed melee weapons, two-handed melee weapons, improvised weapons, ranged weapons, thrown weapons, dual-wielding artillery, and ammo. And those are just kind of containers for the specific weapons that you want to think about that work within these. And these weapons themselves don't do damage. The damage you do is dictated by your character's class. The weapon adds a specific kind of ability that you get when you use that weapon. For instance, two-handed melee weapons inflict +1 damage. That's pretty normal. Here we have improvised weapons inflict dread, which is damage, with a disadvantage. Thrown weapons, attacks suffer disadvantage at far away, cannot be thrown at distant range. So it's an interesting system. There's some really cool things going on. We also have a 1d12 random NPCs, our wandering monsters, different adversaries, but the charts in the main book go a lot further. There are so many charts for NPCs and monsters and coming up with traps and dangers and perils and discoveries. And let me tell you, this art, I have never read these graphic novels, but I am going to seek them out now. I think they look absolutely amazing. There's the art credits, so you can take a look at that. But the art in this game is just so charming. I have just completely fallen in love with this world. It is an age of ashes. The gleaming empires of old had faded into obscurity, leaving a tired world riddled with dungeons and ruled by fiends. They say that the world has no heroes, but clearly they've never met you. So we get into our typical kind of what is an RPG. Again, this book is very well written for new players. And we get into our dice mechanics. So the main mechanic here for all of your stat checks is a D12. Awesome. I love D12s. They're always fun to roll. And basically you will roll your D12. You will add or subtract bonuses up to or including from -3 to +3. Those are the kind of like the bookends, the extremes of the bonuses you can add or subtract. And then depending on if you're proficient or deficient in that ability or what you're trying to do, you might roll 2d12 at advantage, taking the highest, or you might roll 2d12 with a deficiency and take the lowest. Sorry, I don't know if I explained that well, but you guys know what I mean. But then normally you will look up at a chart here, and on a 1 to 2, it's a complete failure. On a 3 to 5, it's a failure with a plus. On a 6 to 8, it's a success with a twist. On a 9 to 11, it's a success. And on a 12, it's a complete success. And then this gives you some examples of how to interpret those various degrees of failure or success. And so it's pretty easy to narrate the outcome as a solo player. Some checks are just a target number, so a 9+ is just what you need to get. And so it's kind of up to you playing as the solo GM to determine that. But I think it works really well. And then we have our attributes and stats. And so there are 4 attributes and there are a few stats, and the stats are derived from your attributes. So you have Vim, Vigor, Knack, and Know-How. Those are your 4 main attributes. And then for the stats, we have Courage, Attack, Defense, Quest Points, and Inventory Slots. And again, all of those are derived from your attributes. What I really like is the Quest Points stat. Quest points are a currency that replenish at the beginning of each session that you can spend to improve your die rolls, or you can spend to trigger some of your character's abilities. I love that. I think that is so cool. And then each of those 4 attributes has an associated group of 4 skills with it. And so the Vim skills, we have Charm, Mettle, Inspire, and Perception. The Vigor skills, Athletics, Might, Vitality, Intimidate. Knack skills, Nimbleness, Sneak, Search, and Trickery. And then Know-How skills, Lore, Realms, Tinker, and Wilderness. And man, just take a look at that image there. God, that's so good. So good. And so then we also have abilities, and your abilities are dictated by the class that you choose. So the character, there is quite a bit going on with your character. This was the first character I made, and I kind of made some of the changes apparent on the sheet. So just so you can see how things might change as you are creating your character. So we have our stats here, Vim, Vigor, Knack, Know-How. And then we have our, what was that? I always forget they're called. Attributes and stats, right? Attributes and stats, yeah. So we have our attributes here, and then our stats here. And these are derived from that. So courage is basically your hit points. And then your attack value, your attack modifier is based off of your vigor. Your dread, that's how much damage you do. And that's kind of psychological or physical damage, mental or physical damage. That is based off of your class, not your weapon really, but your class. And then your knack helps your defense, and then your know-how and different things will also affect how many quest points you have as a currency to spend. And then depending on where your character is from, they will get a certain type of, a certain gear loadout that they can take in. And then we have a second page on the character sheet where we can keep track of more notes and quest ideas and that kind of thing. And then finally, depending on the class that you take, you will use one of these sheets here that will have your class perks. For instance, the Knight Errant has a steed, so you can choose what kind of steed you might want to ride. And then you will have your different abilities. Now, what's really cool about the abilities is that when you are at this level, so when you are at level 1, you have access to both level 1 abilities. When you progress to level 2, you tick one off to keep, and then at level 2, you get both of your level 2 abilities, and then you can use the one level 1 ability that you chose to keep. Then that happens again for level 3. At level 3, you get both level 3, but then you have to choose one level 2 to keep in addition to the level 1 ability that you kept. So as you progress through the levels up to level 10, you will have different ways to kind of build out your character. And I think that is really, really cool. I like that system a lot. The 4 classes, or there's 6 classes: Bard, Knight Errant, Dungeoneer, Loyal Chum. Loyal Chum is so cool. The Gnome, and the Rascal. And then we have a quick overview of XP. I love the XP system in this game. It's fun to gain, and it's also fun to spend because you can spend it on a whole bunch of different things. So the way you get XP is via questing and role-playing, completing a quest, having an encounter with a new creature, or creeper. Now that says encounter, that doesn't say combat. So you can parlay a lot. You can intimidate, you can talk. The creatures in this game are intelligent, they have language, they have desire, they have knowledge. And so it's not just, oh, here's a goblin, let's kill it. It's like, here's a goblin, what is it doing? What does it want? The goblin might want something from you. You can have a significant NPC encounter for XP. You can solve a problem in a creative way, get into peril or hijinks. So just getting into fun, crazy adventures can give you XP. Exploring 10 or more hexes, exploring a new location or point of interest, find a magic item or relic, or crafting an item. So there are all kinds of ways to gain XP, and all of those ways encourage the players to engage with the systems of the game, not just get into combat. Excellent, so cool. You can also get XP from role-playing. So building a relationship between characters, pursuing your personal goal, demonstrating your character's ideal or their flaw or their folk quirk might cause some trouble, tell an important story, or reveal a significant truth about your past. So all kinds of ways to generate XP. You can spend XP to level up, going from levels 1 to level 10. You can improve your skills, you can improve your stats, you can do all kinds of different things with your XP as you earn it. Super, super cool. And then we get into character creation, and this has an 8-step guide here to creating your character. Again, we'll go into more detail into this a little later in the next video. But here we have the spread for the Bard with details about all of their abilities. And then we have our Dungeoneer. Look at that amazing drawing. We have our Gnome. And then we have our Knight Errant, our Loyal Chum. I love the Loyal Chum. It is so cool. And the Rascal. And then here we have all of our kin. So we have Bogarts, Boggles, Boggerels, Bugbears, Imps, Mushrooms, Quartles, Shrims, Gelatinous Goo, Gnomes, Goblins, Humans, Skeletons, Welkin, Wayland, and Wugs. And so you can be all of these different types of characters. And those are called folk. And your folk will give you bonuses to your character at the beginning of the game, such as different skills and quirks. There are 3 quirks. You can choose 1 quirk, or you can choose 2 quirk and a quirk. And so you can have kind of like a balance of good things and bad things, depending on how you want to role play. But we have our Bogarts, we have our Boggles, we have our Boggerels, Gelatinous Goos, Bugbears, Goblins, Gnomes, Imps, Humans, Quartles, Mushrooms. I love the little mushroom folk in this game. The Skeletons, the Shrims, the Waylands, the Welkins, and the Wugs. And then each one of these will be from a certain number, or certain different homelands. And the homelands are represented all on this hex map here. And then you can choose the homeland. And once again, the homeland will give you proficiencies that you might be good at. And so when you use one of those proficiencies, you will roll 2d12 at advantage because you are proficient. And so the different areas you can be from and that you can explore in the game are the Dribby Downs, Fleabag County, River Country, the Quagmash, the Scallywag Strand, the Used to Be Forests, the Dingledale, and the Underlands. And then we get into our whole character story section. So we have a backstory. We have a 1d6 chart for each class for backstory. We have a 1d6 chart for each class for their ideals and their flaws. We have a 1d6 chart for their personal quest for each of the classes and for their relationships, because you will establish different relationships with different people in your parties or with significant NPCs. And then we get into our everything about your inventory, all of your loot and things that you can buy and discover, your coins and economy, how armor works. Armor is pretty simple in this game. Armor and weapons are pretty simple. Again, the focus is not on violent conflict in this game. There will be fights, but the focus is on other things. And then we get into a very, very handy chart about all of your services and vendors. So anything you need to know about travel, or staying inns, using a city, all kinds of things like that. And then we have a D400 for chart for mundane items. Now these don't really have any specific tool or any specific utility rule about them, but they can be used in your role playing and combined with your various skills, stats, and abilities, attributes and abilities. So D400 there. Magnificent items. So these are magical items. Now magic is not prevalent in this game, and I kind of like that. The relics and things have cool magical abilities. You can find things that will augment your character with magic. But one thing I really like about this game is that in the 240 pages, there is almost no mention of spells. And that is something that is very personal to me. That's something that I dislike because I never play magic users in games, and I always get a little bummed out about how much of the core rulebooks for so many games are basically a little tiny pieces of rules and then a whole bunch of stuff on spells. You know, look at DCC RPG. That book, it's like 500 pages and like 300 of it are dedicated to magic. And so whenever I buy a book like that, there's a huge section that I never get to use as the player because I never play magic users or that kind of magic user. And so I like that there is very little mention of spells in this game. As a matter of fact, is there even the spell list in here? Yeah, spells table. So all you have is a table at the back of the book that has your spells on it. And this is a D100 table for spells. And so, yeah, that's it. That's your spells. You don't need to worry about casting time or range or magic circles or having components for spells. No, you find a scroll, you cast this, the spell of flight, and it gives the target the power to fly for a session. That's it. That's the rule for flying in this game. Ghost walk. The caster and level others can pass through walls like a ghost for level minutes. So simple, so direct, so easy to keep track of. And for bookkeeping spells, that's one of the reasons why I don't play games as magic users, because I often find that there's too much bookkeeping, but that's not the case here. But yes, so these are like magical items and relics. There are rules for treasure hunting. Different sites will have different treasure hunting bonuses that you will add to your treasure hunting rolls. And then depending on what you roll, you will roll up on these subcharts for the things that you have found. If you find a loot pile or a mythic hoard or an ancient hoard and so on. So all the rules are very easy for a solo player to use for hunting or for loot hunting. And then we get into the crafting section, and this is something that's really cool. I love the way that it's presented. You can craft magnificent items, mundane items, potions, and cooking with all kinds of different creatures that you can hunt. And then we get repair. You can repair items, and then we get into all of the various components. Again, an incredible piece of art here, and all of the components. So we have different ways to find them. You can gather materials, you can hunt, you can pick herbs, and you can fish. And these might be proficiencies that your character's homeland will give you. So for instance, I had a character that I drew up, or I rolled up, that was good at picking herbs. So anytime I'm going out picking herbs, I get to roll at, I'm proficient at that. So I get to roll at advantage for picking these herbs. And then you just roll on the same kind of D12 chart and you look it up to see how many herbs you found and like the quality of the herbs. And then here is all of the components and where you can find them. So in Fleabag County, here's all the beasts you can find. Here's all the fish you can find. Here's all the herbs you can find, and so on. And then you get into the recipes and how those work. So we have all of our beast components. So when you fight monsters or when you hunt monsters, you can take these components and you can collect them. We have elemental components, fishing components, herbal components, and then we get into our recipes. So once you gather those components, then you can make the things on these recipes. So we have alchemy, and we have cooking, and we have crafting. Super, super cool. I love that. It just adds a very easy to manage survival system to this game. And then we get into travel and exploration. So here's the rules about all of your adventuring. A day is divided into 4 travel phases, 2 during the day, 2 at night. And then every time you can move through a certain number of hexes. I think you can move up to 2 hexes every turn during the day, 1 hex during the night. And as you move from 1 hex to the next, you will roll up on your travel check to where you might discover a perilous encounter, a dangerous encounter, a bump in the road, an uneventful journey, or a discovery. So I want to show off this art here because I love that drawing so much. And basically that goes from really bad to really good. So perilous encounters are more dangerous. That's probably where you might come into combat more often. And then discoveries are usually pretty cool, and those can lead to more adventures and more quests. And you also have a camp phase. So 1 turn will need to be used resting. And when you're camping, you can go into something called story time, where the characters can tell stories. And you can also answer this D100 list of questions about your characters and the world, so you can further develop your backstories and your characters' relationships. The conflict section, this goes into combat. Again, combat is really quite simple. There are, like 6 pages of combat rules. You don't really need to worry about movement. This doesn't use any kind of miniatures. It uses just distance. So we have close, nearby, far away, distant, and extreme range. We have a D12. Again, those D12 charts of degrees of success for melee combat and for range combat. And yeah, you just roll your D12, you add or subtract any bonuses, and then you look at what happened. If you hit, then you do your character's dread worth of damage. My knight errant had a D10 dread, so that would have been 2 dread. So that's basically it. And you can defy death. So death isn't easy in this game, but it is something that can happen. There are a few conditions, but I believe we have a chart here at the back that details all of your conditions. So very easy to find, things like bleeding, stun, slowed, tired, weakness, that kind of thing. All right here. Very, very nice. Again, this book is just laid out in such a way that makes it easy to learn and easy to play. Downtime. So in between adventures, you can gather information, you can go merrymaking, you can perform, you can research and work. And so there are different charts to handle your downtime. And then we get into the built-in adversaries here. And so there are 3 different types of creatures. Well, we have creatures, critters, and creepers. Creepers are small little bugs and things. Critters might be your bears and foxes, that kind of thing. And then creatures are your goblins and things like that. And then within each of those 3 categories, there are different types, and we have different levels. We have a goon, a bruiser, and a champion. A goon is like cannon fodder, of course. A champion is that group's leader. And then a bruiser might be their lieutenant. And so those are the different levels of the different creatures. And they have very, very simple stat blocks here. And we also have very easy ways to create adversaries on the fly. So if you just want to create some new type of creature, you can roll up on these charts right away. Very, very cool. And then here is a great example of what the creatures look like in the bestiary. So we have bandits. These can be used from levels 1 to 10. These cover all 3 of the classes. Their parlay value is 2, so you can try to communicate with the bandits. Their attack is +0, defense +0, block 0. They do 1d6 dread worth of damage, and they have 1 action. They have some different abilities. Some of the monsters will have an ability chart that you will roll on to see what they do on their turn. But as you can see, there are all kinds of super, super cool creatures to encounter and not just fight. The book is very detailed in saying that these creatures are intelligent. They have language, they have desires, they have knowledge. So you're not just meant to kill everything that you come across in this game. And then running the game, pretty typical kind of information about detailed towards the GM. And after this section, we do have some combat for like mass combat and vehicle combat. I don't really care for either of those things in games that I play, so I'll probably never really get into that section. We do have a very short little page here about random dungeons and mazes, and then we get into the last section of the main book, and that is for random tables. So we have our wandering intruder table, their reaction table, which is a D20. And so if you were to come across, let's say a 41 would be a Felmog Knight, and they want treasure. And so, hey, you could maybe bribe that knight not to attack you, or maybe recruit them to go on a treasure hunt with you or something like that. This is an amazing chart here, a D100 chart for random NPCs. So we might come across 55. And let's see who 55 is. Is Humdy Priel, a gnome, a hex breaker, that's their job, wearing a mirrored mask, and just wants recognition for all the hard work they've done. So there's our NPC. We have location aspects, so different things when you go into a city or a town, depending on where you're going. You might find something that has an overgrown graveyard or wooden pillars. So those are all for the different locations. We have perilous encounters for all of the various areas that you will encounter in the game. Dangerous encounters. We have discoveries, random dungeon adversaries at D100, random dungeon traps and obstacles, puzzles and riddles. D200 magic items with all kinds of cool magic items that have all kinds of neat abilities that can help your players. Different types of relics that you can discover. Different books, curses, spells, and yes, that's it. Then the last section here is just a very brief introductory adventure. And then also a really good index. So yeah, overall, this is one of the coolest core rule books that I've read in a long time. It just makes me want to play in this world. And it is a lot, there's a lot here. You know, typically I like much simpler games. Typically I like games that maybe leave more of the rules up for interpretation to the player. You know, things like Morkborg or Fallen or things like that, where not everything is detailed. This book has a lot of detail. This game, the rules are very detailed. There is kind of a rule for everything, but it makes sense. And I think a lot of the rules are creative and conducive to playing the kinds of role-playing games that I want to play. Okay, let's take a real quick look at the Bestiary. And the Bestiary is pretty cool. It has a lot of good creatures and a lot of good charts. So just like the core rulebook, there are a lot of good charts here. So this says, the land of Eam is full of color and wonder, a world with many storied regions and realms teeming with diverse creatures and critters. Eam is also a land in decay, for the great civilizations of the past crumbled long ago at the hands of the mysterious Gloom King. Ever since the world has declined into an untamed, unchecked land filled with all manner of monsters and fiends. So this has 190 different creatures, critters, and creepers. And I would love to see this turned into a co-op adventure board game. I'm just saying, let's make it happen. Man, this world is so cool. So here we have, just like the main book here, the main rule book, we have some very handy charts on our inside covers. We have a reaction table, our wandering intruders, and our all adversaries. So there's all the adversaries listed in this book. I'm not sure if that also includes all of the monsters from the core rule book. I'm wondering if there's any doubles. Let me look up fun ghouls. Are fun ghouls in here? Let's see here, fun ghouls. It might be a comprehensive bestiary, but let me look up fun ghouls. And yes, so I think it is comprehensive. I think this bestiary also includes the monsters from the core rulebook. So if you just want to use this, you won't have to double up with your core rulebook on using that as a bestiary. And then we also have a table for critters, creepers, and creatures. Again, those are your three main categories of the type of creature, the type of monster that you will be encountering. And then here we have our alphabetical list. These pages are the same from the core rulebook, so how to use. adversaries on the fly is the same. And then we get into, yep, so there's our bandit. So yeah, so this is a comprehensive guide. And we'll just do a real quick, oh, look at that. A Bogrillian Tortoise Knight. Super cool. God, I just love the art. I love the vibe of this game. It's so whimsical, but it also is a little creepy. I mean, that Darkling, yeah, that's kind of disturbing there. The Dogard, the dude, the Dorgan. Sometimes I just crack up when I look at these things. I love this Dryad there. What a cool Dryad. A Gloog, a giant inkpot spider, the Gloom, a Gwargle beast. And what is that? Oh, that Harpy looks wicked. A Hippogruff. I love this Homunculus and this Hippopotamus. Hippopotamus, that is super cool. A Humongoose. Oh man. An Imp Familiar. A Kobold. A Kugra. So as you can see, there's a nice mix of kind of traditional enemies like a Lich, and then there's also other things. The Lich has a D12 ability chart, so you never kind of know what they're going to do from one turn to the next. Yeah, super, super great bestiary. And then I believe here at the back, you have your random tables, and this is where is very useful, because we have our D100 curses. We have different mutations, so your monsters can mutate. The monsters can know magic as well, so you might have spells for your monsters. But then we have all of our terrain tables. So if you're in towns or coastal, desert, plains, dungeons, you can use these charts to roll up your adversaries. And a lot of the adversaries, they do scale for all levels. So you know, this Sputter Guard can be encountered from levels 1 to 10. And so you don't need to worry about having different stats for the different levels of the monster. Very, very handy. Forests and meadows, monsters and hills, rivers and lakes, swamps and marshes. And so very easy to roll up random encounters. So that was just a really quick look at the bestiary. It's a good bestiary. It has everything that you would want a bestiary to have. And then finally, we get to the real star of the show, and that is the Sandbox, the Mucklands Sandbox campaign setting, along with this incredible hex map. When I set this thing out on the table, I was instantly struck by how adventurous and how inviting this world is. Let me zoom in down here to this Quagmash here, and you can just kind of see all the various things that we can explore here. We can go to Puddle Point and Toadstool Thicket, or the Lost Willows, the Croaking Bog with this tower here, the Gator Maze. There's a little hut there. There's a little cave there. I wonder what that is. There's a skiff, or we have Bugbear Hole, Bogtown, and Munch. We have the Orch Sty up here. Up here is a Marsh Gate. And all of these places, all of these little points of interest have detailed rules and detailed NPCs and quests and things to see and things to do within this world. And this map is just overflowing with things like that. And yeah, it's truly is one of the coolest hex maps that I have ever seen for any game. I love this hex map so much. And I also like this campaign setting. Now, big open world sandbox campaign settings can be difficult to run for solo because these are all keyed to hexes. There aren't a whole bunch of random charts for random discoveries for this game. And so I'm thinking of a different way to run this Mucklands realm as a solo player. And what I'm thinking about doing is treating my games as a travel log, basically, where the whole goal of my game is not to discover where these things are. I'm saying that I am returning to the Mucklands. I've been away, I've been traveling, maybe out going on quests, and I'm coming back home. And I have a map. I have knowledge of these areas, and I'm coming back as a more seasoned adventurer to this land. And it is my goal as a kind of traveler, as a kind of tourist, a touring adventurer, is to land at one of these coastal towns and then explore the world. So I know where Fort Bulwark is because it's on my map that I have. And so I might say, hey, I want to visit Fort Bulwark. So then we'll do a hex crawl up to Fort Bulwark. I will go to Fort Bulwark. I will experience the things that Fort Bulwark has to offer here, and go visit the various NPCs and kind of check them off. Like I have like a checklist for my travel log, for my travel book. So I'm going to be using this as my travel log. And I think that'll make it really fun, because the main draw for me to this game is to experience what the creators have created, because it's so inviting. So for me, it's not discovering random things, it's discovering the things that have already been created, because each of the various locations has named NPCs that you can interact with. Each of the locations and the major locations and the points of interest have different quests, and those quests are divided into different types of quests. We have hijinks, so those are fun, goofy, lighthearted quests. We have daring do, dangerous, daring, and heroic quests, and then we have doom and gloom, and those are darker, spookier, and more serious quests. And then there are also chances for us to gain heroic titles as we complete those quests and as we complete different sites and things that we discover in this land. And so each of the major locations will give you a little snapshot of what's going on. You can have some rumors that you can discover, a chart for rolling up sights and sounds, and then it'll detail the major NPCs. And then finally, we will get to our quests. And so this is the city of Dunk here, and Dunk is just over here. So Dunk is in the Drippy Downs, and it's in a river. It's near a river. And so, you know, we could come in here and then travel up through the nameless lake to reach Dunk. And then when we reach Dunk, well, here is our detailed map of Dunk. So we have Boulder Hill, the Boulder Hill Book Club, the Iron Halberd, the Tashin's Rations. And then all of these locations are detailed in the following pages with all of the things that is going on in Dunk and with all of the NPCs and then all of the various quests. So what isn't detailed, what doesn't have all of your maps and your monsters and your treasure, are the quests. The quests when you're playing solo, or when I'm playing how I'm going to play solo, that's where I could use other tools such as decks of cards, and that's where I could randomize things to randomize my adventures. And so there is still some of that if you choose to play the game the way that I am going to play it. But this campaign setting is really one of the most useful, one of the coolest campaign settings that I have ever encountered. I love this, and just reading it just gets me excited to live and play in this world, to visit the different settlements, to discover the different points of interest, to engage with all of these wacky NPCs that are kind of there for me to have adventures with and to have relationships with and to establish a repertoire with. And yeah, it just seems really, really cool. Like I said, I am absolutely head over heels in love with this game, and I haven't even played it yet. So, hey, you know what? It might crash and burn. I might end up saying, hey, you know what? Actually, this game is better on paper than it is in practice. I don't think that's going to happen, because reading it, I'm just so excited to play, and I've tested stuff and it works. Everything seems to work really well. There's just a lot. It could be overwhelming. You know, there is an abundance of things to see and do in this world, and I think the rules will handle it pretty well, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, so that was the settlement. Are there any random? Let's see. So I think it could be cool if there were some more random charts in this book for developing dungeons, for developing that kind of stuff. But, you know, like a lot of us, I have enough tools to do that. Calendar and seasons. So keeping track of time is pretty important in this game, especially for a sandbox experience. We have our factions. So if you want to keep track of your different factions and how their relationships are going. And then there is one final, where did that go here? We have our hex reference. And so these are the major points of interest for each of the zones. So Drippy Downs, Fleabag Country, Quagmash, the River Country, Scallywag Strand, and the Used to Be Forest. And so, you know, you can find, if you're at hex 33.3, you can find that here at 33.3. That's all the way up here. And yeah, so what is there? So 33.3, and you have, you know, bubble stop or something like that. So it does work pretty well. I wish that there was I wish all of these points of interest, all of the keyed hexes, I wish there was a chart of those in alphabetical order. So when I just go to Junktown, I can look at Junktown alphabetically and look up the pages for Junktown rather than trying to match the location. So I think Junktown, like, you know, is Junktown in, I believe, River Country. Junktown is in River Country. And so it would just be nice to have all of these alphabetical with their hex number and their page number so I could easily reference that while I'm playing solo. But that's just maybe my one and only little complaint. And then we also have on the inside cover here, on the outside cover, we have our D100 rumors. And then on this cover here, we just have the map. And throughout all of the books, there are a lot of QR codes that will take you to the download page. So again, very thoughtful. You know, in the core rulebook, when you get to creating your characters, I believe just right at the start of that section, there is a QR code that you can use to go to the website and download your character sheets. Yep, there they are. That's super cool. How awesome is that? It's very, very handy, very useful. I've already gone there and downloaded all of my character sheets. I am going to download the quick start rules to see if maybe those can be helpful as a resource for while you are playing, if it's smaller and something that can be utilized as a quick lookup collection of rules. So yeah, so that was my overview of Lands of Eam, Land of Eam. If you didn't order this, if you didn't back this, it is available through Exalted Funeral, and I highly recommend it. If you are looking for something that is incredibly whimsical, but also has a ton of adventure and discovery, a game where the focus is not on combat, but the focus is on questing, on adventuring, on meeting creatures, parlaying, having adventure, I think Land of Eam might be the perfect game for you, especially if you are looking for something that is lighthearted in theme, but not lighthearted, not simplified in rules. This game still has some crunch to it. There's still some heft to its foundation. It's not a simplified game, even though it might look like a somewhat kiddie game. It's not. There's a lot going on here, and that makes me very, very excited, especially just because of how awesome it looks. So in the next video, we will do a detailed examination of character creation and kind of some session zero stuff as I kick off my campaign. So we will talk to you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.